Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Hey, welcome to all of you. We're glad you've joined us today. Yeah, I'm Randy Davis. This is Faith in Your Recovery, and we're glad you're listening in. But we want to challenge you here, and there's a little something that goes with responding to that challenge. We would love for you to shoot us a question or a comment or even an idea for an upcoming show about this or any of our previous or future episodes. Let us know what you think. Challenge us with a question that will automatically enter you in a drawing for a free copy of our book, Recovery Conversations with Randy Davis. We hope to have Volume 1 on the market in July. We'll be giving out 10 of those to our listeners. We'll draw the name from the hat, so make sure you get us your questions, your comments. Send that email to podcast@ablbh.org. Those initials stand for A Better Life, Brianna's Hope. One more time, podcast@ablbh.org. Get us those questions and comments. Thanks. We just want to hear from you and get you involved here even more so. Our guest today, Christopher Upton, affectionately known as Monkey. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but he's given me permission to use that title. I don't want you folks to think I'm being disrespectful. That's what he's chosen. So welcome, Monkey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. It's a little awkward to put it that way, but obviously you're okay with it. I'll try
Yes,
to
sir.
be okay. How did you get that name?
Actually, I got that nickname from a really good friend and ex-girlfriend. Like, it was just an affectionate nickname.
Okay, and it's stuck, and that's
Yeah.
what you go by in this old world today.
Yep, it's stuck enough that even my own mom calls me it now.
All right, okay. So we're glad to hear that, and it gives you folks a little explanation. Monkey, tell us a little of what life's about today. Who you are, what's going on, and then we'll go back and discuss some of those darker times.
Well, like you said, my name is Christopher Upton. I go by Monkey. Today, life's all about recovery, sir. You know what I mean? I moved to Anderson about a year and a half ago, came to the halfway house called Bethel House, which is an amazing place.
Came from where?
I came from jail, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I lived...
Here in Madison County?
No, I got in trouble in Newcastle, and the judge sent me here thanks to my ex-fiancé and me continuously calling the director, Mike, of the Bethel House, and then him contacting my attorney and my judge. I came here about a year ago and just really embraced the recovery community. The recovery community in Anderson is absolutely phenomenal.
How is that? Give us a couple of examples of how it's phenomenal and why the Bethel House is so important to you.
Well, the recovery community is phenomenal because just about any day of the week you can find a meeting anywhere, whether it's NA, AA, and even if you're an addict and you go, like I'm an addict, but I prefer the Fifth Chapter House. It's close to Bethel House. It's comfortable. I've got to know the people there, and even though I'm not necessarily an alcoholic, I mean, I drank every once in a while, but they embrace you no matter what. As long as you want to quit using and you want to find recovery.
It's about recovery.
Yeah,
it's
that's
about
what it's all
it's
about.
from.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what your walk of life is, where you've been. All it matters in this in this recovery community is where you're trying to go. And as long as you're serious about it, you know what I mean? The people, they embrace you. Like I said, you know what I mean? I'm not from Anderson. I mean, I grew up in like Pendleton, Ingalls area, but I moved to the east side of Indianapolis like 20 years ago. Came to Anderson didn't know really anybody, you know what I mean? And I got to the Bethel house, and our house manager, Scott, my first night there, he didn't make it feel like a sober living house or a halfway house. He sat down and he talked to me and the guy that came with me like we were family, honestly. You know what I mean? And
So you were accepted from the get-go.
Yeah, from the get-go. You know what I mean? So the guy had to work in the morning, and he stayed up till like 11, 12 o'clock at night just talking to us, you know what I mean, about our lives, about what we were trying to do there, you know what I mean, and the house, you know what I mean, and our...
It sounds like they care.
Yeah, you know what I mean, and most rehabs and other places like that, it's a strict set of rules for everybody, and there's really no deviation. Our director is more of a case-by-case thing because not everybody's the same. Not everybody's recovery is the same.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, me, for instance, when I first got there, I needed structure. I had never wanted it, but always needed it. You know
That's
what I mean?
usually the case. That
Yeah.
goes together. Those who need it most like it.
But it's not the type of structure where you feel smothered by it and overwhelmed with it. It's just enough structure for you, if you want, to get your life on track at your own pace. And the great thing about the Bethel house, our house, is once you work through the program and you graduate, if you're not in a point in your life where it's time for you to go out on your own, as long as you're still following the rules, still working a recovery program, you don't have to go. You can stay as long as you need. I graduated Halloween night, and that was when my 90 days was up, and I'll be there a year, the 30th of next month.
So would you consider that your clean time, a year, basically?
I've got, this Sunday will be 13 months clean.
Congratulations. Okay.
Thank
you. say that you were into the drug side of things.
Yes, sir.
More than the alcohol. What drugs?
Mainly heroin and then methamphetamine.
How long? How long were you an active user?
An active user, well, I've been an active user of one substance or another since I was 10, 11 years old.
How long ago's that been?
Since I've done heroin, or?
No. So how old are you? So we know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm 40 years old.
So 30 years of struggling with drugs of using and struggling with drugs of some type. Is that accurate?
That's very accurate, sir. And it started off, I was like 10, 11 years old. You know what I mean? Started off with marijuana, and then hanging out with the older kids around where I lived, you know what I mean?
We hear that quite often.
That
yes.
they were starting to experiment with other things, and by, I think, 13, 14, I was doing pills and...
Regularly?
Yeah, pretty regularly, and cocaine every once in a while. And then I had my first child at 25, and I started drinking pretty heavily because the mother of my child had CPS in her life from a previous child that she had before we got together. So I couldn't really do drugs because I was getting drug screened. So I started drinking quite heavily up until, for about a year and a half. And then she gave me an ultimatum when my son was born. And oddly enough, when she told me it was the alcohol or him, I poured all the alcohol down the drain and I haven't touched alcohol in probably, well, he's 15, so almost 16 years.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It was a substitution for a substance.
That's usually the case.
Yeah, but all the other substances, it's... Because in addiction, it doesn't matter what the consequence is, whether you're going to lose your kids or your job or your family or whatever. You know what I mean? That's the horrible thing about drug addiction. Nothing comes before that addiction.
Explain that to people the best you can who just all they can say to themselves is, how could you choose the drug over the child, the addiction over your family, over your life? How can you best define or explain that?
Well, usually when people start using drugs, it's because of some trauma in their life or something like that, or they just don't feel like they fit in or they're good enough, you know what I mean? And the horrible thing about addiction is it's an obsession in your brain, depending upon what drug you use, you know what I mean? So you've got this thought constantly running in your head, I need this, I'm not going to feel right if I don't have this. And then after a while, because you changed the chemical makeup in your brain, you know what I mean, you don't feel right.
It goes from a choice to a need.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the drug that I eventually, through a horrible series of events, decided to mess with, it wasn't so much a mental need, it was an actual physical need, like really bad sickness that came with it, and you don't want to feel that. So whatever obstacle you put or thing that you say, well, okay, well, today I'm not going to use because if I use today, for instance, I got to go to work and my boss is catching on, he's going to fire me. It doesn't matter because you have to schedule everything around that drug and not being sick, and then it takes over, right? For instance, I normally don't talk about this, but me and my children's mothers, before I started heroin addiction, they had, and CPS or DCS had got in their lives, and they had told DCS that, which I was in and out of jail, so I wasn't regularly in my kids' lives because I hadn't started using heroin yet, but I was using other drugs, and DCS got involved, and it was pretty much after a while the ultimatum was given: either you get clean or this is what's going to happen. And I personally, I had some relatives die, and I tried for a minute, you know what I mean? Like I would time the drug screens with DCS to try and be able to get away with it, but I lost my brother or my uncle, and then 62 days later I lost my little brother. And
both to drugs?
No, my uncle to, I don't know what exactly it was. Like he was painting at this bus lot, and the fumes, because he had COPD from smoking,
wow. Yes,
got to him, and then but he ended up taking a pill from a lady, and it slowed his respiration down enough that he couldn't breathe anymore. And then my little brother actually died from using Roundup, like the weed killer Roundup.
Yes, I've heard of that happening. And
yeah, he was 28 years old. You know what I mean? Never smoked a cigarette. You know what I mean? Lived pretty healthy and did a side job for a family friend.
Pretty innocent death, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I struggled with it for a long time because, you know what I mean, DCS was in the middle of taking my rights from me, and my little brother was, like, he was an amazing dad. His kids, when he passed, his kids were 10 and 8, and I think they had spent 2 nights away from him their whole life. You know what I mean? I was in and out of my kids' lives, and like he was a great guy, do anything for you. And the monkey you guys are listening to today is a great guy. Like, I like to help people, you know what I mean? Love spreading the message of recovery, you know what I mean? But active use monkey, junkie monkey, I was a horrible person.
So would you say up until a couple of years ago for that change, is that anyways near close, or help us out?
It was about, even before, well, when, like I said, I've been clean 13 months, but it honestly took a few months for the recovery to kick in. And like I've said, it, my graduation to Bethel House, and when my sponsor gave me my 1-year token at Bethel House, if it wasn't for our director, Mike, and my co-manager, Scott, and Mike's wife, Kristen, them being the awesome people that they are, and making Bethel House not even feel like a sober living house, but a home. You know what I mean? Where no matter what you've been through, what you've done, that doesn't matter. All that matters is that you're there for recovery. And as long as you're doing that, you're I mean, even when we've had guys mess up and they've come back, like we accept you no matter what, as long as you're trying to change. And if it wasn't for those people being the awesome people they are, I honestly don't think I would have stuck around for the message to stick.
So you'd be back to that junkie monkey.
Yeah.
As you referred to him a few moments ago.
Oh, absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, because that's the thing with addiction. All it takes is one bad decision, and you're right back in that obsession. You know what I mean? And
you fall much faster than you climb.
oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I had some disappointments when I first got into recovery. Like, my youngest son, it just turned 6, and I was absolutely an absent father. Like, well, I was a deadbeat dad. Like, and when I got to recovery, I found out that my, at the time, 5-year-old son thought I was dead because his mom would, like, show him pictures. And, you know what I mean? Like, this is your dad, you know what I mean? Whatever. But he never got to see me, you know what I mean? So
he had no reason to believe
yeah,
you were alive.
You know what I mean? That's what you do with a relative that's passed away. You show a kid pictures and you talk about him, but they don't see him. You know what I mean? And when I first found that out, guys, like that honestly rocked me to my core because I'd already lost the rights to my first 2 kids. And, you know what I mean? Thankfully, I have an amazing sponsor. And, you know what I mean? I called and talked to him about it. And I'm like, dude, like, how can I rebuild from that? You know what I mean? Like, this kid thinks I'm dead. And for about a solid 2 or 3 hours, you know what I mean, of me talking to my sponsor, I wasn't sure if I wanted to, you know what I mean? But he let me know, you know what I mean, and that's the great thing about recovery. If you're willing to put in the work, you know what I mean? Because it's not easy, you know what I mean? And you're willing to work the steps that are outlined, whether it's NA or AA, you know what I mean? They're proven steps. They've changed untold lives, you know,
Exactly.
amounts of lives. If you're willing to put in that work, then who's to say that this kid won't get to know you? You know what I mean? And I did, you know what I mean? I put in the work. I've done the 12 steps, you know what I mean? I graduated my thing, and I've got to see my son. His mother brought him down here to Anderson one time to hang out with me for a little bit, you know what I mean? I video chat him every day on Facebook, every day. And
How old is he?
he just turned 6 on the 4th of this month.
Okay.
And his birthday was on a Thursday, but Friday, the day after his birthday, his mother picked me up, and not this last weekend, but the weekend before. I actually got to go up and spend 4 days with him, you know what I mean? And, like, now he knows me, you know what I mean? Like, me and his mother get along great now, right?
That sounds good.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like the people in your life, your mentors, sponsors, all of them together, your house leaders, they showed you they believed in you before you could believe in you, and you kind of thought, why not? Why don't I give this a try?
Absolutely.
You can only go upwards.
Like, when I first got to Bethel House, because at Bethel House we had our house manager, Scott, or our director, Mike, our house manager, Scott, and then, like, I think maybe a month or so after I got there, we have what's called a chore manager. Like, he's just in charge of, like, assigning people chores, checking the chores type thing. The guy that was the chore manager decided he was moving out, so they're like, well, we need a new chore manager. And I thought, well, you know what I mean, that'd be kind of cool to have a little bit more responsibility in this house that I'm living in, you know what I mean, that I'm basing my future off of, you know what I
Plus,
mean?
it allows you to give back
Yeah,
as a
and
person.
so I took that on, and then, like, anybody that knows me knows I'm really picky about my hair. I go once a week to my amazing barber every Sunday, whether I need it or not. And my director actually introduced me to my barber. We both go to the same barber, and I used to get rides from him to go get my haircut, and one day we were coming back from the barber, and his son asked if they could go do something after the haircuts, and he said, "No, I have an intake that I have to do, and Scott's not available to do it." And I'm in the back seat, Randy, and jokingly I said, "Well, I'll do the intake for you, Mike." And he turned around and he said, "Would you really do one, Monkey?" I said, "Well, yeah, I think that'd be kind of neat to learn, you know what I mean? Get to know the guy before he's introduced into the house as, hey, this is the new guy, so-and-so, you know what I mean? And be that first face that they see, you know what I mean?" And so long story short, he let me sit in on an intake, and he was like, "So what'd you think about it?" And I was like, "Dude, that's pretty cool. I would kind of like to do that again." And then it became, all right, well, if Scott's not available and I'm not available and we absolutely got to get this guy in, we'll have you do it. And I got to go tell the judge that I got in trouble with, was it last month in April, that not only did I go to the house and I completed the program, and I volunteered to do the chore manager and got responsibility, but last month I got to go back and tell that judge, now my name's on the letterhead with the manager and the director. Like, I co-manage the house, like, you know what I mean? And it's pretty amazing to watch guys come into the house that have never really been in like a sober living or any type of recovery type thing, and just watch them grow as a person, you know what I mean? Like,
that builds you as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Randy. It's a beautiful thing. And when I first started into recovery 13 months ago, our house, like most halfway houses, requires what's called a 90 and 90 meetings in 90 days. You know what I mean? One a day for the first 90 days you're there. And I would go to them, you know what I mean? And like, my life's an open book, you know what I mean? I have no problem talking to people about recovery and the horrible choices that I made that led me to recovery. And so I would always share at the meetings, you know what I mean? But about a month or two ago, I was given the opportunity to start chairing my own meeting. You know what I mean? And to me, that's really cool, you know what I mean? To give back like that and to host or chair a meeting, you know what I mean? And when I first started, it was a meeting that was kind of dwindling down. Like, the first couple times, I think we had like 10, 15 people, you know what I mean? Last Thursday, we were up to like 31 people.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow, that's awesome. Well, you're a fresh face with, you know, a different experience than what they had heard or been involved with. And you can speak from the, I've been there, done that, have the scars to prove it, but I'm rising above that, and you can too kind of approach, yes?
Yes, absolutely. You know what I mean? Like,
so what would you say throughout your struggle, your battle with drugs, was your lowest point, and what was one of your first victories, that kind of that lights on moment, aha moment, whatever you might call it? But give us that lowest spot. Was it maybe even the loss of your brother? Or, yeah, go ahead.
See, there was so many, honestly, Randy. Like, the loss of my
Share
brother.
a couple.
The loss of my brother hit me pretty hard, you know what I mean? But it is a 30-year drug addict. I've learned a long time ago that, and that's what most of us drug addicts do. We mask our feelings, you know what I mean? So when my brother died, I went off the deep end. I don't think there was a time I was sober for about 2 years straight. You know what I mean? And not only did I lose my uncle, who was like a father figure, a best friend, you know what I mean? And then 58 to 60 days later, 62 days later, something like that. I can't remember the exact dates, but it was within 2 months of each other. Then boom, I lose my brother. And then 2 weeks after we bury my brother, I get a letter from DCS saying they're terminating the rights to my children.
Wow, that's,
you know what I mean?
Boom, boom, boom.
Boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? And I haven't seen my oldest son or my daughter since 2015. You know what I mean? So you figured from 2015 to 2022, I had absolutely no want or desire to feel anything other than intoxication. You know what I mean? Like those were pretty low points. I mean, I've done, and that's the one thing about, I mean, all drugs really, you know what I mean? We do stuff for drugs that we wouldn't do when we're sober, you know what I mean? And when we look back on them, it hurts. That's what keeps a lot of people. And after losing my kids and my brother and my uncle, like a year or two, no, we lost them in 15. In 2020, I lost my little cousin to a drug overdose, and he was like my best friend in the world. He was like a little brother. Like, we did everything together. And 12 hours before he died, I had overdosed. My mom actually came, and that was pretty low for me. You know what I mean? My own mom had to come into my grandmother's bathroom and Narcan me 3 times to bring me back. And then 12 hours later, we get a call that my cousin had died.
That's a bunch. You know, I've never really struggled with drug/alcohol addiction. Okay, we're all addicted to something, so I won't say I've never had an addiction, but not a deadly one that I can recall. But the fact remains, those who struggle with it, and even one out of it, wow, we can't snap our fingers and get them out of it. So what was an aha moment, lights on, man, I think I can do this kind of thing for you?
That's awesome that you asked that, because anyone in that Anderson recovery community that's ever been to a meeting with me that was a what brought you to recovery type meeting has heard this story.
Good.
Me and my now ex, she was my fiance at the time, we were living in our car. A friend had found out, long story short, and he's like, "No, Monkey, that's not cool, dude. And like, I've got this big house. You're not going to live in your car. Come to Newcastle and stay with me and my wife." And I thought, well, this is an awesome opportunity. Like, we don't have to live in the car. You know what I mean? This guy and his wife also were doing drugs, and another pretty low point in my life. You know what I mean? They were methamphetamine users, and about a month after hanging out with good old Monkey, they were using heroin intravenously, you know what I mean? And long story short, this guy had stole from me, and I found out, and because of my volatile temper and just the way I was while using, when he found out that I found out, he got scared and he called the police on me. Back in my using life, I was always known to carry guns, and I got caught by Newcastle police with a gun when they were coming into the house, and then they found drugs in me and my fiance's room and a pair of scales for weighing drugs. So I caught a dealing case, and while in this jail, this guy, at this time, I didn't know that he was the one that told on me yet. I hadn't got the paperwork from the court. And he's doing video visits with me and everything else. And some guys in the jail had told me about another halfway house here in Anderson, the House of Hope. And they were like, "Well, dude, you can get out of jail, Monkey, in like 30 days if you just call this guy at this House of Hope." And I thought, well, if I'm going to get this judge to sentence me to some type of recovery instead of jail time or prison time, I'm going to be serious about it. You know what I mean? So I stayed thinking about it, and I was flip-flopping back and forth whether or not I was going to do some recovery or if I was just going to try and get probation and then run, which is what I had done my whole life. And the guy that had told on me he did a video visit one day, and like I said, he was also using, and he was sick. Pretty bad. And all I could think was, as he's whining and crying about, you know what I mean, how horrible it is, I started thinking, dude, at least you're in jail, Monkey, and you know what I mean, you're eating 3 times a day, and you've got a shower, and you've got a bunk. I mean, yeah, we had that at the house that we all had stayed at, but all I could think, Randy, was if you get out of jail, whether it's through the House of Hope or probation or whatever, Monkey, and you go back to using, you're going to be that same whiny crybaby that you're sitting here judging, dude. And you know I knew that I was way worse than that guy was when I was sick. And that was my aha moment. And it was like, well, wait a minute. As long as I just go out and don't use again, I don't have to be that guy that couldn't look himself in the mirror. You know what I mean? That people didn't want around because you didn't know what you were going to get.
So that became your moment of inspiration to move forward and maintain that effort.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I did get out, and I went to the House of Hope, and it's a really good program here in Anderson. If the listeners don't know, you know what I mean. It's changed countless lives here in Anderson, just like the other halfway houses here. Because, like I say, Anderson has an amazing recovery community. We have multiple halfway houses, plenty of meeting areas, but they have certain rules when you're from Henry County, which is Newcastle courts.
Yes.
And you cannot go back to Henry County for any reason unless the judge okays it. Well, I broke that rule. And I didn't use while I was in the House of Hope. I was going back to see a female. And it came to light. And I was asked to leave the House of Hope. They said I could wait for transport and go back to jail, or I could go on the run. Now, a little backstory before this. I've been going in and out of adult jail since I was 17 years old. 15 of the last 22 years of my life have been spent in a jail cell. So when they gave me the option, wait for this transport officer to come and take you back to jail, or go on the run.
No choice.
The criminal in me said, no, we got to run. So unfortunately, I messed up and I went on the run. And I told the director at the House of Hope that I was not going to use drugs. He was crazy. He didn't know what he was talking about. 55 minutes after leaving the House of Hope, I overdosed and had to be Narcaned. I was only on the run for 4 days. And 2 out of those 4 days, 7 or 8 different nasal sprays of Narcan had to be used on me. I was overdosed 2 different times in 4 days. And the last time, the only reason I'm here right now, speaking to you guys or even alive, is because somebody was in the upstairs bathroom using it. So a roommate of the girl that I was staying with while I was on the run had to come down to the downstairs bathroom where I was in a full-blown seizure, blue, knocking on death's door, and she found me.
Moments away from your last breath, most probably.
Oh, absolutely. And when I came to, and the next morning, the police surrounded the house. I went to jail, and all I could think was, dude, it was the first time, and like I said, I spent years and years in and out of jail, Randy. That was the first time as I'm being booked in, seeing these officers that I've seen before at the Newcastle jail. All I could think was, dude, I am so lucky to be here right now.
So let's think as somebody else who was in the battle much like you were. You know, they were in and out of jail. They were struggling on and off with drugs. They'd Narcan today, Narcan the next week, and so on. What's the advice you would give to that person? Or if you'd have heard it, what is the advice you'd have given to yourself 8-10 years ago?
That's a tricky one. The only advice I could give for somebody that's going through it is you will always, always, always find a reason to get high.
Say that again.
You will always find a reason to get high.
Okay.
Whether it's my car has a flat tire, I have a hangnail, my wife or my husband yelling at me, whatever it is. We're addicts. We will always justify getting high by any means, because that's the obsession of the addiction. My advice is, and it was something that somebody said to me in a meeting when I first got there, and you hear it all the time, really. You got to find something worth staying sober for. And and we say in recovery all the time, like, you can't get sober for your judge. You can't get sober for your wife or your kids, because it'll always be okay to let those people down. You know what I mean? Or you will always, like me, I had my mother guilt trip me, countless girlfriends guilt trip me, and like, you don't love me if you won't get sober. I love you, but I know I'll disappoint you, and you'll forgive me. I'll always make an excuse, and you'll forgive me. And if not, you'll walk away, and I'm okay with that because my drug will still be here.
You can manipulate others. It's a little harder to manipulate yourself.
Yeah.
Yes?
So you have to get sober for yourself. You've got to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know what I mean? You have to be done suffering. But once you hit that done suffering spot and you've lost enough, you've hurt enough, it doesn't take much for someone to want to go back out if you're not doing an active program, like working the steps, sponsor, meetings. Meetings are the lifeblood of recovery. You know what I mean? But once you get into that spot, you got to find something worth dedicating your life to, you know what I mean, something that makes you want to stay sober. You know what I mean? Me personally, like I shared in a meeting the other day, mine is my son. You know what I mean? I love that little dude, looking him on that video chat or just playing with him when I was up there a couple weekends ago and hearing him call me daddy and tell me he loves me. Dude, that's awesome. That is such an awesome feeling to know that I created that little person. He's half me. You know what I mean? And my main hope and goal is I've only got like 3 more years for my son, my oldest son. Because of behavioral issues, he wasn't adopted out. That the state won't tell me where he is, but as human beings, we want to know where we came from. So I know that he's going to look me up eventually, and I'll be able to tell him, look, buddy, I know that Daddy messed up through drugs and bad decisions. Dad messed up, but here's what I've done with my life while you were gone.
I'm not messed up.
I'm not messing up now.
It's
you know what I
past
mean?
tense.
Yeah, I messed up, but here's why I fixed my life, and I'm sorry. You know what I mean? How can I make it up to you? You know what I mean? And before I got to recovery, I had no goals. Like I say it in the meetings all the time. You know what I mean? I never wanted a regular job. I was not going to clock in and out 9 to 5 and pay taxes and all this other stuff. And when I got to recovery, I found what started out as just a job to pay my rent and my child support, and it turned into almost an obsession, Randy. Like I found welding. You know what I mean? And
Welding?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I
Great occupation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's awesome. It's awesome. I work for a small. Well, we're getting pretty big. We've got a few plants in Elwood.
Who is it?
Steel Mart.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I know a couple of the guys from
Yeah.
there quite well. That
I've ran a few of their lines there at Steel Mart. Like I some days are a little rougher than others, depending upon what they're going to have me welding on, to be honest. But
sure.
you know what I mean? I wake up every day and I go to do something that I enjoy. You know what I mean? And that's my main advice. Wake up every day and find something to do that you enjoy. You know what I mean?
I don't care if you're in addiction, out of addiction, if you've never thought of addiction. That's powerful advice.
Yeah.
When you can do what you enjoy, you quit working.
Yeah.
When your passion's your job.
Yeah.
It's an extension of life. I've been blessed to be able to be there for
Absolutely.
35 or 40 years. So, as you know, Monkey, the name of our podcast is Faith in Your Recovery. What do those 4 words mean to you in your experience?
Faith in my recovery. Well, I mean, honestly, if you don't have faith, like, faith is a belief in something that you can't see. You know what I mean? You can't see it, you can't hold it, but you believe in it. You know what I mean? And that's one of the first things we say in recovery is you have to get a higher power. You know what I mean? Whether it be my personal higher power, like I was raised from a small kid by a Catholic grandmother, you know what I mean? Like in the church. My personal higher power is Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? That's not everybody's, you know what I mean? But
nope. I'm asking you the question, so that's a good answer.
You know
okay?
what I mean? And that's what we say in the meetings and in the readings and in the literature, a God of your own understanding, you know what I mean? But to me, you can't have recovery without faith. You know what I mean? Because you have to have faith that every day you can wake up and decide not to use. And some days, Randy, it's not even, I'm going to wake up today and I'm not going to use it. You wake up and it has to be for this minute.
Exactly.
For this minute, I'm not going to use. And you go by minute, you know what I mean? And
I get that phrase, one day at a time.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes one day's too long. It's got to be a half a day or the next hour, next minute, as you just said. And then it builds up.
yeah, like I honestly, like I said, when I got like I told the guys at the house, when I got my 1 year token, when I first got to Anderson and to Bethel House, I absolutely did not see me having a year, you know what I mean, almost 13 months clean and sober. I
Never had, right?
Yeah, the longest I had ever had, I think, was like maybe 2 months when I got put on probation one time, and then I was smoking weed, and then once I started doing that, I just kept on going with other stuff. You know what I mean? It's the longest amount of clean time and sober time that I've had since I was 11 years old.
That's, I get it. I understand the numbers. I've heard it over and over, but that's quite an accomplishment. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On the work, on listening to others.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. We have this awesome older gentleman, and the meetings that I go to, his nickname is affectionately Cupcake Dave. And he's a great guy, but he tells you one of the first things you got to do is sit down, shut your mouth, and open your ears.
Good advice again for anybody, anywhere, okay?
Yeah, because...
So, is there anything you'd like to close here with, Monkey, as we wrap this up?
About the only thing I'd like to close with is if you're out there and, you know what I mean, you're struggling in addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, whatever, because like you said, we all have addictions, you know what I mean? Just know that recovery is possible, you know what I mean? No matter what you've done, you know what I mean? Because that's why my little cousin died an active user. The guilt of what he'd done while using and to use kept him using. No matter what you've done in life, you know what I mean? You're worth a shot at recovery.
You hear that, folks? You're worth a shot at recovery. We believe that here at A Better Life. Brianna's hoping through our podcast, Faith in Your Recovery. So once again, Chris Upton, Monkey, thank you. Thank you for your time, your story, your honesty, and I like where you're headed, buddy.
Thank you for having me.
Well, good thing to have you here with us today, folks. We hope you're blessed. Continue to tune in for our future episodes. Take care. Amen.